everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am sharing with you what I read in October. I am going to go through these in the order in which I read them, roughly. I probably have a couple of them mixed up, but that's what we're doing today. And we're going to start off really strong with Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So we're following Dana, who is a modern woman in 1970s when this book was written. And she is inexplicably pulled back in time. And this happens over and over again. And she is pulled back to the 1830s, I think it is, but 1800s. And Dana is Black, so of course this is an absolute nightmare for her. She is repeatedly called back in time against her will to save the life of this young white boy who is her ancestor. She is in this very unique position as a modern woman with modern ideas and with certain freedoms in the 1970s, and pulled back to a time where people assume that she is enslaved, where she has no rights, no freedom, and where she has to care about this young boy because if she doesn't save him, she won't exist. I knew from what others had said that this would be a fast-paced book, and it is. It's very intense, feels almost like a thriller. There's some dark stuff in here, of course. It is just super compelling in a book that you want to just tear through to see what happens. But what I wasn't expecting and was surprised and really impressed by was the amount of character work that Butler's able to do in this very kind of like fast-paced, very plot-heavy kind of a book. So it just ticked a lot of boxes, and like I said, I absolutely loved it. The next book I read is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. I read this for Victober and also for my Pop Culture Osmosis series. I'm not going to say a lot about it. I will link my reading vlog if you want to check that out. In a nutshell, I enjoyed the reading experience. It was fun kind of learning the actual story behind Oliver Twist. And there were a lot of things I liked. Very colorful, like larger than life type of characters. You have to suspend a lot of disbelief in this. So I think like the story was a bit outlandish maybe in places, but overall enjoyable. And it's not something that I will probably reread, but I didn't like regret reading it. So kind of a fine book. The next book I also read for Victober, and this is A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is a collection of children's poems, and for the most part, it was just a very lovely, delightful collection. Even though these are poems from the Victorian time period, a lot of them are still nostalgic and kind of timeless. A lot of them, because they're for children, have to deal with children playing and children's imagination. Like there's a poem in here about a child kind of like sick in bed and how they bring their little toys into bed and play with them, and the like blanket becomes like rolling hills and that kind of stuff. So like I said, the majority of the poems were very just lovely and cute and imaginative. But a caveat for this is I wouldn't just start reading any of these poems to a child without reading them yourself first, because there is a smattering of poetry in here that has like pretty big like British colonial type of ideas, some casual racism in here. Like there's a poem in here called Foreign Children, which is very ick indeed. So you would just have to, if you were interested in reading some of these poems, just vet them first before you start reading them to a young child. But like I said, most of them were lovely. The next book I read because I was in the mood for something spooky, and that is Small Spaces by Katherine Arden. This is a middle grade horror novel where our main character, Ollie, she is in 5th grade. She has lost her mother the year before, and she's really struggling in school, in life, and she gets kind of involved in this supernatural event where these scarecrows kind of come to life. They are doing the bidding of this entity called the Smiling Man, and she and a couple of her friends have to figure out how to solve the mystery, how to save the busload of kids who are on a field trip, and figure out what the Smiling Man wants, like who he is, how to stop him. And it was just full of a lot of very spooky, creepy, eerie kind of vibes. This would have terrified me as a child. But it also had a lot of kind of like cozy autumn vibes too. There's a lot of like, baking, and like on this field trip, they visit this farm and they have like tomato soup and like freshly baked bread. And so it just had a lot of the vibes that I was looking for. And I wouldn't say this is like my favorite middle grade ever, but I think for a book that you want to use to maybe frighten a 10-year-old, then this would be a good one. Next, I read a thriller, I Let You Go by Clare Mackintosh, and I really enjoyed this. It was a good mix for me of kind of like that plot heavy like thriller element mixed in with getting to really know the characters, mixed in with some great setting and atmosphere. So I just thought it was very well-rounded. We have two sections. The first half of the book being a little bit more slow-paced. We're learning about the characters. We're kind of involved in this mystery, trying to find out someone who's committed a crime and kind of trying to piece together what happened. Then the book pivots at the halfway point, and the second half is much more fast-paced, more thriller elements where there are dangers involved. The book starts out with a short prologue where we see a young boy hit by a car, and it's a hit and run. So this is the mystery that they're trying to solve through the first half of the book, is who hit this child and killed them. And we have two perspectives. So we follow Jenna, who is mourning the loss of her son, and she decides to basically run away from her life and start over. So she leaves after this accident, moves to the Welsh coast, to this remote village. So there's lots of great atmosphere there, and you are learning about her character. She's having flashbacks to the accident, and she is just trying to start her life anew again. And we also follow the perspective of the lead detective who's working with his colleague to try to find the hit and run suspect, trying to find out who it was that had killed this boy. And we kind of flip between those two perspectives. I can't really say much else because it would be spoilers, but like I said, I feel like it was a well-rounded thriller. Next up, another book that I ended up loving was Lost Boy, The True Story of Captain Hook by Christina Henry. This is, I would say, a YA retelling, of course, based on the Peter Pan story. So in this, Christina Henry has basically reimagined Peter as the villain. He is the antagonist of this book. We follow Jamie's perspective, who of course turns out to be Captain Hook. That's not a spoiler. We know that Jamie is Captain Hook, and it's just kind of fun to see how he gets there. So like I said, Peter is the antagonist. I feel that Peter's character, even though he is reimagined as the villain of the story, there was a lot about his character that felt like Peter Pan. So he's very playful. He wants to have fun. He kind of has that like boyish charm about him. He wants to adventure, but he wants to have fun and play kind of at any cost. He doesn't really care about the other Lost Boys. He doesn't really take into account their wants or opinions or like what they need. Jamie takes care of that. Jamie makes sure that they go out hunting and that they have enough food and that the boys are taken care of. And Peter doesn't really care. He views the boys more as just like playmates or maybe even playthings. He views them as a way to have fun. And if a lost boy gets hurt or killed, he'll just go back to what they call the other place and get another lost boy. The book has an almost post-apocalypse feel, even though it's not a post-apocalypse book, but it's very much has a lot of like survival elements because you have these young boys trying to survive on this island, which is a dangerous place. You have to contend with like weird beasts and monsters that live here, with crocodiles, of course, with pirates that live on the island. And it just has that feel to it. It's a dark fantasy and there's a lot of like violence, but overall it was just like a lot of fun to reimagine the Peter Pan story in this way. Like I said, I think certain elements of Peter were kind of like true to the character. And also if you read Peter Pan, while he's not a villain, obviously in the original, he is like a little bit of a jerk and he's a little bit aloof. And so I think it rang a little bit true in that way. That's kind of where the similarities end. And if you're looking to read this as kind of like an extension of the Peter Pan universe, or you think it's going to be like Peter Pan, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you come at this just as a way to have fun and kind of imagine like, well, what if Captain Hook wasn't the bad guy? Then it's just kind of a fun read. Peter Pan, the original book, you can do literary analysis on there. There's a lot to pick apart and dissect. Whereas with this, I think it's very straightforward. So it doesn't feel like Peter Pan in that way, but I just thought it was a lot of fun. The last book that I technically finished at the beginning of November, but I read the majority of in September and October, is Some Hellish by Nicholas Herring. This is a debut novel, and I got this as an ARC. This is the first ARC I've ever received, which was very, very exciting to me. So very grateful for Goose Lane and Kathy from Goose Lane for hooking me up with a copy. Unfortunately, this was not the book for me at all. But I don't feel bad for like not liking it because everyone else seems to love it. And he actually just the other day, he won, Nicholas Herring won the Atwood Gibson Writers Trust like prize for fiction, which is awarded to, how do they word it? I think they word it to like excellence in fiction writing. It's obvious that he has talent in writing. On a sentence by sentence level, I would read passages that I was just like, wow, that is beautiful writing. That is gorgeous. The imagery he uses, and sometimes he just puts something in a way where like, wow, I never thought of like describing something in that way, but instinctually knowing exactly what he means. So the writing, A+, beautiful writing. Where it lost me was there's not really a story. It follows a fisherman named Herring and like his fishing buddies on Prince Edward Island, and kind of like the stark reality of life as a lobster fisherman. And you follow him as he's preparing for the fishing season and all the preparations that have to be made to the boat and like the weeks of work that go into that. And you follow them like on the water. He's having trouble in his marriage. His wife has just left. And you're seeing him kind of flounder in his own life. But there's no real through plot. So I really struggled with the lack of plot in this. And it's very meandering and very monotonous. And I feel like that was probably purposeful because you're watching the protagonist be a little bit directionless, kind of stuck in a rut in this monotony. He's abusing like alcohol and feels kind of stuck in this life. So I'm sure the way it is written is supposed to mirror that, but that's just not the kind of story I want to read. I found I had to kind of slog my way through it because there was no clear plot for me to focus on. If that's not a problem for you, then I think it is gorgeous writing, but it just unfortunately wasn't the one for me. Those were the books I read in October. Overall, a very, very good reading month for me. What was your favorite book that you read in October? Let me know in the comments below. Or if you've read any of these books, I would love to have a chat about them. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.